Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Collective Clicks podcast. This week, I'm joined by Robert Wensley, the founder of InvestorLift. We're going to talk about the national wholesaling model, why you should have less diversity in your exit strategies and specialize more, and marketing that companies are using to get to $1 or $2 million per month in wholesale assignment fees. How are you doing today, Robert?
Excellent. Thanks so much for having me on, Brandon.
Yeah, super excited. Sounds like today is day number one for you in the DR, right?
So, well, at our new office, a lot of people, they look at InvestorLift and they see we're moving billions of dollars of deals every year, and they assume that we have this massive office with hundreds of employees. We've actually been working out of like a couple little apartments here and there for the last few years. And actually, I'm sitting now today in our first official office that we just opened. I think I'm going to post an office tour video on YouTube pretty soon, but officially just moved in yesterday. So pretty excited about that.
Yeah, cool. That's fantastic. Why the DR of all places?
So my co-founder is Ukrainian but was born in Russia, lived in Ukraine for the last 15 years. And as a result, a lot of our team is Russian, Ukrainian. And when the war started, I was like, I got to get you out of Ukraine. He didn't want to leave Ukraine. So I played a little trick on him. I'm like, hey, for my birthday, why don't you come down to DR and we'll rent a yacht for the week? And he's like, all right, cool. So he came down February 21st for my birthday. And of course, while he was down here for my birthday, Ukraine got invaded. I was like, called that one. Luckily, I got him out. So he came down here. I think he was just coming down here for a week for my birthday and ended up never going back after the war started. And then over the last couple of years, we've actually moved out our entire everyone from Russia, everyone from Ukraine to the DR because you get visa-free access for both countries, and it's on the same time zone as we are on the East Coast. And I do not want war interfering with my business plans.
That's crazy. Yeah, well, that's a unique solution though. So you actually took these people and moved them from their home country into the Dominican Republic. Was there resistance on that, or were they happy to get out? I'm sure you got a mixed response from different people.
No, everyone was happy. There was two. I think we got two guys hanging behind because they have older parents or grandparents that they're taking care of, so they're kind of they're stuck behind enemy lines, so to speak, taking care of their older family members. But everyone else was like, yeah, no, this seems like a good opportunity. And we live in a beautiful place. We're a few blocks away from the beach here. We got swimming pools, soccer fields, gym, pools. It's not like we're in a third world country. We're in one of the nicest areas in the Caribbean. So good place to run a satellite office.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, good for you. I'm excited. I'm honored to be your first podcast appearance in your brand new, not studio or whatever you're calling that place you're recording from. And honestly, just really grateful and excited for this podcast episode overall. It's funny, we were just talking before we even got started what to talk about, because the overlap between what we both believe in and what we care about and what we teach and all those things is just so massive. I feel like making this podcast shorter than 8 hours is probably the biggest challenge of them all.
We both believe in the gospel of making millions of dollars.
That's right. But believe it or not, there are different gospels of making millions of dollars. We subscribe to a specific denomination that tends to be really effective, but it's newer, and that's why people are less into it. But in many ways, I think that you have, every big movement that happens, there's always going to be a few companies that are kind of behind it, enabling it, making it possible. And I think of InvestorLift like that for the virtual and national wholesaling model, where it makes it so much more feasible. So on the chance that there's somebody listening that doesn't know you, your background, how you got into this, I want to spend the meat of the episode just kind of talking strategies, tactics, all that kind of stuff. But I think it'd be super helpful to know kind of who are you, what is InvestorLift, what are you doing here, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I was born in. No, I'm just kidding. No, we'll go back a little bit, but not too far back. So growing up, I always wanted to make a shit ton of money, and my friend whose dad made the most money was an investment banker. So I actually grew up trying to become an investment banker. And I asked him, I'm like, how do you become an investment banker? He's like, go to a top school, preferably Harvard, go and study economics and finance, work on Wall Street, and then try to get a job at like Goldman Sachs or one of these big investment banks. So that was the ladder I was trying to climb for the first part of my life, and got into Harvard, got Mark Zuckerberg's dorm room, did economics, did finance, graduated Dean's List, but I was doing summer internships at finance firms, and what I realized is I didn't really like doing finance. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna make a few $1 million a year, but I'm working for some other rich asshole, and I was more of an entrepreneur. So right before graduation, turned down all my job offers and decided, hey, I'm gonna go learn how to be an entrepreneur. But I didn't have a good idea at the time. It wasn't like I had some $1 billion idea that I wanted to kick off. But I remember looking at this one stat from the IRS. It's like 90% of all millionaires make their money in real estate. So I'm like, well, a safe bet would probably be to, go learn real estate. So I started cold calling house flipping companies, pitching them on coming to work for them. Ended up taking a job on Brad Chandler's team, Express Home Buyers in Washington, D.C., and came in thinking I was going to learn how to become a house flipper. And little did I know that would really turn into me learning how to wholesale, which I didn't even know about. And then not just how to wholesale, but how to create this new era of mega wholesaling that we've never seen before, but I believe really is the future of real estate investing. You're going to have this split, the split between the guys doing the construction, the guys sourcing the deals. That split has started to emerge, but it's just gonna accelerate, more and more. So worked on Brad Chandler's team, took his team to over $1 million a month. Then after I left there, worked on another team, took them from about 150,000 to over $1 million within, I believe, about 6 months. And then 5 months later, we broke $2 million a month in assignment fees earned. Then was like, done it twice. Let's see if I can do it a third time. Started working with a few other companies. Tarek Lamousa's team, took them from pretty much zero wholesaling to over $2 million a month. And I believe we did that one in about 7 months. So we started doing it over and over and over again, taking these companies that, had some real estate experience, were like maybe making a few $100,000 a month flipping. A lot of times keeping the existing team in place or even shrinking the team to a much smaller, leaner, lower overhead team with less burn, and pivoting them into wholesaling and turning them into these mega wholesaling machines that pump out millions of dollars a year and have super high net margins. And we were doing this over and over and over again. Every time we've tried to do it, we've done it. But of course, dispositions was always our bottleneck, right? Acquisitions, it's somewhat easy to crank up Google ads. You come in, double your budget. I know it's a little bit more complicated than that, but you want twice as many leads, double your budget. You're going to have some diminishing returns, but you're going to get more leads. You want to double your sales team, hire twice as many salespeople. On dispositions, when you start scaling out into multiple markets, you have a really good core buyers list in one market and you start scaling up into other markets. A lot of times you get kicked in the ass real hard because you don't have the buyers you need to go move the deals at the numbers that make sense. And you end up having high contract follow rate. You end up not making the assignment fees you should be making. There's a lot of issues you run into. So after getting kicked in the teeth a few times myself, trying to branch into multiple markets, I built this product called Investorlift originally for myself and for my friends. And originally it was just kind of like our secret sauce, right? I'm just like, this is just gonna be our secret sauce. I'm not opening it up publicly. And we used it to allow ourselves to branch out into multiple markets and become nationwide wholesalers. And then a couple of years ago, about a little over 2 years ago, I opened it up to the public and it just took off. We now move more real estate investment deals than anyone else in the world. Last time I checked, we were doing 2.5 times more properties per month than all of the iBuyers combined. and generating just, billions and billions of dollars of offers and selling billions and billions of dollars of deals. So we got a lot of data, and we're changing a lot of businesses. And also the cool thing is I see a lot of trends in the data, because we're spinning off over 250 million data points per month. So what that gives me is a little bit of a crystal ball and like where things are headed and where things are going. And to be honest, I haven't even talked about much of that on a podcast. I don't think I've talked about very much of that at all on podcasts before. So we'll dive into some of that today, and I think it's going to be a great episode.
Yeah, I'm really excited to do that. And for what we've we you may not have talked about this on podcasts, but I know we've certainly talked a lot about it and used some of those insights and everything to kind of drive our location strategies across our clients. Because it all starts with the product that you can sell, right? You need to get contracts that are sellable, and ideally with larger gross margins. And to do that, I mean, understanding the dynamics of what produces that, I think is huge. So that's fantastic. So InvestorLift, if I were to simplify it, let me say how I see it. You can correct me, because I'm sure you've thought about this a lot more than I have. I think of it like access to this list of cash buyers, along with the technology and some of the tools required or needed on a day-to-day basis to kind of manage that whole piece, whether it's like emailing or texting buyers or whatever the case is, and accepting offers. So it's sort of like the data is the list, and then some tools for contacting that list. And that's what I view as like the bulk of the product. Is there anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that we're trying to do is give you liquidity on your deals, give you liquidity on your contracts. We're going to help you sell your deals faster at higher prices. The average wholesaler in America, typically off of InvestorLift, will have an average assignment fee of $14,000 or $15,000. But our guys consistently clock average assignment fees. Last month, nationwide, I believe it was $32,100 nationwide across the entire InvestorLift network, which is huge. Right? Like that's over twice as much money per deal. So people ask you, okay, how the hell do you get assignment fees that high? The way we do it is just by giving people access to better tools to drive more demand for their deals, better data, more buyers, putting more eyeballs on their deals. So, if you had one deal with one offer on it and you had the exact same deal with 5 offers, which one's going to make you more money? Right? And on a $500,000 house, it's really easy to make another $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 per deal, right? For the buyer, they're only paying a fraction of a percentage more for that property to secure that deal. But for you, the wholesaler, if you go from a $15,000 assignment fee to a $30,000 assignment fee, you've just increased the profitability of your business by 100%. So that's really our goal, is to like really shed light on like the real money in wholesaling is in nailing dispositions. Everyone focuses on acquisitions, but you can do everything right on acquisitions. But if you don't get dispo down, nothing on marketing and sales and acquisitions matters. It's all wasted. You got to cash that check at the end of the day.
Yeah, in my opinion, it seems like there's way too many companies that just focus on selling the deal, right? And that's kind of the focus of dispositions, is we're going to do this until we get an offer and it's accepted and we have found a buyer for the property. And not nearly enough effort put into how do we sell it at the highest price we could possibly sell it for. So I think that's super interesting. Like you said, the distinction of InvestorLift could be in some cases the difference between 1 offer and 5 offers. In both circumstances, you may have sold the property and you would have made a profit, but you can make significantly more profit if you can sell it for more. And you've already gone through all that hard work of acquisitions, and you've already gone through a lot of the hard work of dispositions and all that stuff to make that happen. That's fantastic. I kind of think of you as a sort of leading the change to more of this virtual model. Because so many of these people that we talk to, they've been in a local market model for a long time, right? You talk to these real estate investors that say, I'm a Salt Lake City or a DMV or a Orlando, Florida, whatever the case is, real estate investor. What I look for is more deals in whatever that city is. And then I have a variety of exit strategies for those deals. That's like the standard model right now. Some of those people lean really heavy towards flips, do some wholesales. Some lean heavy towards wholesales, do some flips. Like everybody seems to do at least a little bit of everything. Novation's getting really popular, et cetera. So I'm really curious to hear about your, like, what would you say to that person about different ways that they could go about their business?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go through. I'm gonna shoot straight on all the shit everyone's fucking up on. Okay, if you think about how to make a shit ton of money really fast, the way that most people are looking at their businesses right now is they're like, "Hey, I'm gonna go 9 out of 10. Like I'm gonna be in the top 10% at what I do." If you're in the top 10%, you fast forward 3 to 5 years, you're out of business. Okay. And there's some guys that are going to be like, okay, I'm going to go 10 out of 10. I'm going to be the best, right? If you're the best, you're going to do okay, but you're not going to absolutely crush it. What you really got to do, what I always tell everyone on my team is you got to go 11 out of 10. 11 out of 10. You got to be better than the best. You need to develop some sort of competitive advantage where you literally are the best in the world at one specific thing. And the problem I see with so many of these real estate investing businesses is they're all over the place. They're doing buy and hold. They're doing development projects. They're doing fix and flip. They're doing wholesaling. They got a coaching program. They got affiliate sales. They got a podcast. They got a million different things going on. They're a jack of all trades, but they're master of none. And you know where you see that? You see that on their net profits at the end of the year. You'll see that on their tax return. You'll see that on how much do they actually take home to their family. Because when you're doing a million different things, you're never going to develop a sustainable competitive advantage on one thing. You're never going to really dial in the numbers on one thing. So like I remember when I was working at Express, we had 70 rentals. We were doing 60 flips at a time. We had development projects. We had a coaching business. And then wholesaling was kind of like this ugly little stepchild. And we were making no money. We're making absolutely no money. And the first thing we had to do was go cut all this shit and just start focusing on just wholesaling. We probably went from over 150 people working for the company, like either directly or through subcontracting and things like that, to maybe a dozen people. But what happened to the net bottom line is we became way, way, way more profitable. So it's like Adam Smith, right? You ever know Adam Smith, like Basic Economics? All markets shift towards specialization. And when you shift towards specialization and becoming the best at whatever it is, the best at creating some widget, the entire market benefits. So like when I got into the game back in like 2015, you had people running their own PPC and building their own landing pages and building their own phone systems and doing all their own marketing and then building their sales team and then having in-house construction and in-house design and in-house this and in-house that. And you have these massive behemoth real estate businesses that were trying to do everything but weren't doing anything well and really weren't making that much money. Okay. And no one really saw wholesaling as like, you know, a real way to make money. They're like, oh, we can make twice as much money on the flips. Why would we wholesale? But what I realized is if you just focus on one thing, and it doesn't have to be wholesale. It could be like, I'm just going to focus on building a crazy rental portfolio. I'm going to focus on being the best at construction and flipping or whatever it is. But you got to pick one thing and just go all in on it. And for me, that was wholesaling. And I just want to become the best at wholesaling. And of course, once you master one market, and you've kind of tapped out one market and you're the biggest in one market, then you got to tack on more and more and more. So I think that's the biggest mistake people are making right now is they're trying to do too many things. They got a million different exit strategies. They got a million different divisions in their business. And anytime I get on a call with a CEO like that, I know that their books are probably in pretty bad shape. Conversely, the guys that are more focused, that are just focused on one thing, those are the guys that are taking home serious checks every day, every month, every year.
Yeah, understood. And I think that level of focus is fantastic. And different people focus on different things. I'm curious what you would think through if you're looking through, like if a company was to focus on a single exit strategy, why should that be wholesaling versus flipping versus novating, versus more of a wholesale model or creative finance. There's all these different exit strategies that you could use. I know wholesale was the one for you, but would you advise anybody to focus on those other exit strategies? Like, is your advice just choose one and focus on it, or is your advice choose wholesaling and focus on it?
I'll tell you what my experience was. My experience was like, so for example, let's look at like creative finance, for example. Creative finance is super sexy. You can make more money on the actual financing than you can on the actual wholesale assignment, right? So when I found out about creative finance, I'm like, let's do a pilot where we introduce this as like, a different acquisition strategy. Let's try to pick up as many creative financing deals as we can. We did it for about 3 months. And then what we realized, it was crushing our cash flows, because the sales guys, if the seller didn't say yes to the cash offer, they would just automatically default. It was kind of like we gave them a crutch. Oh, let's go over to creative finance or seller financing or like whatever, some sort of other exit strategy. And the accounting department hated it because now they have to manage all these payments and like what's going on here? It's too ad hoc. It was way too ad hoc. It was distraction from the core thing that generates cash flow for the business. And I believe if you really want to be really, really good at wholesaling, you got to run your business like McDonald's. So when you have new salespeople coming in, a lot of times you're pulling them in out of other industries. And now you're going to start teaching them about like seller finance and creative financing, all this shit. Like now you've just made the whole training process way more difficult. You made your sales process way more difficult. So I personally like to just stick with like cash offer. And if it doesn't fit that bucket, it doesn't mean we can't monetize it. But I'm going to refer that out to someone that is a realtor, or I'll refer it out to someone that does creative finance, and I'll get a cut of them doing the deal. But I want my guys just focused, right? Just focus on one sales process and just doing that, running it like McDonald's as simple as possible. If it doesn't fit that bucket, let someone else do it and get a cut of it that way. The reason why I like wholesaling as an exit strategy better than, wholesaling, or like novations is like a really popular thing right now, right? There's like a new fad every couple of years. The latest greatest fad is novation. I think there are some instances where novation makes sense. Like if I was in Seattle, when I had leads coming in, there were $1 million plus houses that were built like after year 2000. Like, yeah, novation model makes sense on a lot of deals like that. The challenge that I've seen people run into with novation and wholesaling, wholesaling is much more capital intensive. But with novation specifically, is it just takes way more time to get the deals done. There's way more steps in the process. So your cash conversion cycle goes way out, right? You're not turning your money as fast. And also you need a lot more people to handle the same volume of deals. It's not simple turn and burn, like do a deal a day. Like when we're doing $1 million months, we're doing multiple deals per day. You can't do that with novations, right? You could get to a few $100,000 a month with novations, but you can't do $1 million a month in novations. At least I've never seen anyone do it. And a lot of guys that I've seen go really heavy into novations have ran into really serious cash flow issues. I get calls all the time, once a month, from guys that are like really in cash jams. Their investorlift bill bounces because they went too heavy into novations too fast, and they screw up their cash flows. If you think about, people never pay attention to cash conversion cycle. If you go from 30 days on your cash conversion cycle to 60 days, you make half as much money per year. Half as much money. And when you go from 30 days to 120 days, you make 25% the money you did. So when you add on to your cash conversion cycle like that, every day you're adding on decreases the percentage, decreases the amount of money you're going to make in the business. So I like wholesaling because it's super, super scalable. It's simple. I can run it like McDonald's. It has great return on ad spend and great cash conversion cycle, better than any other exit strategy. And the other exit strategies, if you're just getting started, like I'm talking about this just in the context of trying to build $1 million a month business, In the context of just doing a few deals, yeah, learn seller financing, learn novations, like get every tool in the shed, because when you're first getting started, you're not spoiled with a bunch of leads. But in the context of building like a real money printing machine, I like to just stick with wholesaling.
Understood. A lot of people would use the same, what's the word? Like, I guess, train of thought, so to speak, that you're using with focus and specialization. They use that to argue why they should be in one market versus in multiple markets. Versus what you're arguing here is one exit strategy. And then it seems like you almost don't care about the number of markets, or you're a little bit flexible towards that, which is like the same underlying like principle driving it, but a really different application. What do you think about that?
Well, fix and flip is a completely different business than wholesaling. Wholesaling is marketing and sales, right? You have a certain skill set that you need there. Marketing and sales skill set. Fix and flip is construction management, operations management, completely different business, right? So doing both of those at the same time, you really need to run two companies. Doing two markets at the same time, yeah, it might take you a few days or a few weeks to get to know the different buyers in that market and get to know the geographies, but we're not doing it's the same core business processes. We're running the same business processes. We can use the same salespeople with the same skills. We can use the same marketing campaigns. And we're running the same business. Yeah, there's going to be nuances to that market. There's going to be different areas that are high crime areas we want to stay away from, but we can educate ourselves on those very quickly. It's not like we're reinventing the wheel. We're just running the same gameplay in a different place. Now, the reason why you want to do that is, imagine this. So, Brandon, let's say you won the jackpot tomorrow and you win $1 billion. You're now America's newest billionaire. And you want to go invest that $1 billion and get a return on investment. Would you put it all in one stock?
No.
Would you throw it all in Tesla? No, right? Because that'd be crazy. Because you'd be putting all your eggs in one basket. You would diversify your risk by investing in an entire portfolio of different stocks, different companies, different asset classes to diversify your risk. So you're not beholden to one stock going up and down. Elon Musk tweets something, all of a sudden you lost $100 million, right? Even if you I love Tesla, I only drive Teslas, and I would never put an entire portfolio all in one stock just because it would be insanity. That's kind of the same thing with putting all your eggs in one basket with one market, okay? I'll tell you like an example of this. So there's been times where I'm in a market and I'm running Google ads, and then I have a competitor who hasn't been in Google ads that all of a sudden decides, hey, I'm going to start running Google ads. And I'm pretty dialed in with my numbers where I know how much I should pay for a keyword to get the return on ad spend that I want to target. And then all of a sudden they come in, they start paying crazy amounts where I'm like, you're just going to spend yourself out of business, idiot. But while they're spending themselves out of business, my sales team is not getting any leads off those campaigns. Now, if my numbers work and I know their numbers don't work, I know they're gonna be out of that campaign within a couple of months, and then my leads are gonna come back. But in those couple of months, I'm up the creek not getting leads, right? So if you're just in one market, you have exposure to competitors coming in that market and disrupting your market position. That's number one. But then number two, you have market exposure to the entire macroeconomic environment. I'll give you an example. The guys in Phoenix right now are all getting their asses kicked because that market is behaving right now like the East Coast and the rest of America was in November and December. In November, December, all us East Coast guys, we got our asses kicked really hard, right? It was some of the worst months in wholesaling in the last few years. Average assignment fees went sub 20K on InvestorLift in December, the lowest they've ever been. Now they've bounced back up to the 30s, but we got our asses kicked in November and December. The thing is, on the East Coast, especially, seller expectations have gone down. So we're now able to get stuff at efficient prices where we can now make an efficient market between the buyer and seller expectations and capture a sizable profit there for making the deal happen. In Phoenix, the seller expectations haven't gone down. The sellers still want last year's prices. So all the Phoenix wholesalers that are just in Phoenix, they're all screwed right now. They're getting their asses kicked really hard. And I see it in the numbers. And I've talked to some of the biggest guys in the country. I've been like, dude, why the hell do you have all your eggs in one basket in Phoenix? Like, you need to diversify out of just one market, because all the macroeconomic forces of that market now are impacting your business. When that market's up, your business is up. Everyone's happy. Everyone's buying Lambos. When that market's down, you're cutting staff and cutting salaries and cutting bonuses. So why not diversify? Why not tack on 3, 4, 5 more markets? Is it really that hard? Think about how much time it takes to go learn the nuances of comping and stuff in a few different markets, building up your buyer relationships in a few different markets. Yeah, that's a small cost, but you can get through that in a few weeks or a few months, and then you get the benefit of not having like the micro exposure to competitors and not having the macro exposure of the actual market, whatever the whims of that market are. So it's an absolute no-brainer to be in multiple markets, and if you're not, you're leaving money on the table, and you're taking on unnecessary risk that you could de-risk from your business very easily.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting. And for what it's worth, I really believe in what you're saying here, because I see the numbers across our clients, like our clients who are in multiple markets versus one market and how that affects things. There's also some aspects of, depending on the marketing channel that you're using, that could be more friendly or less friendly. And the channels that I'm personally familiar with, the digital channels, tend to excel in that kind of scenario versus some other channels might be a little bit more difficult to manage in those scenarios. So there's something to that, I think. But it's so interesting because a lot of people would say specialization in market, diversification in exit strategy. You're saying diversification in market, specialization in exit strategy. And it's a completely, I think a completely different model. I have noticed that a lot of people seem almost irrationally fearful of that. Maybe it's just because they haven't done stuff in other markets before. One person who I actually had on this podcast, Aaron Gaunt, you might know him. He's a client of ours and of InvestorLift as well. Doing fantastic. He texted me the other day. I think he had like 40 something contracts last month, and they're dispositioning pretty well, mostly from PPC. So he's doing awesome. But he started in Southern California. When we started working with him as a client, he's in Southern California. Then he got one, because you know how this kind of happens with PPC. You get these stray leads in areas that you're not familiar with. It happens all the time, right? So he gets some lead in San Antonio. He's like, well, might as well try to make the most out of it. And he successfully dispositions the property. And then he thought to himself, that wasn't actually that hard. I can do that. It's not my backyard. I don't feel comfortable with it, and I'm not familiar with it, but it's totally possible. Now he's in at least probably 15 or 20 states. And every time he's gone a little bit wider, he's done a little bit better. So some people kind of get over that. Maybe they just need a little bit of a kick in the butt to see that like they can actually do that. But do you have any opinion on like the people who are like listening to this and they're just thinking like, that sounds nice, Robert, but I can't do that?
Okay. I think where this stems from is when we first started pumping $1 million months, we told people we're national wholesalers. Okay. When we said we're national wholesalers, we didn't really mean we're like in every single city, county, and state. But we started putting the word out. Like people were, we jump on podcasts, some of the initial InvestorLift guys that were hitting really big numbers, doing a couple $1 million a month. And they're like, hey, we're a national wholesaling company. And then we accidentally started this whole national wholesaling trend where everyone was like, oh, wow, national wholesaling. And then you had a bunch of gurus that were pushing out courses, teaching people to go on Google Ads and just target the entire United States of America because your cost per lead is like $5 and you can get the cheapest leads in the world. So that was a trend last year where like all these guys were like learning that strategy from a few people in the game and testing it and getting their asses kicked. Because targeting the entire United States is the stupidest shit ever. No, you want to have a handful. When we say nationwide wholesaler, I mean, you're in like 5, 6, 7 markets max, you know? You're in a handful of markets. You might, when one market stops performing or isn't performing as well, you might kick that one out and go audition 2 or 3 more. And so you're bringing in and out markets maybe, you know, depending on what's going on with them, and always running new tests. But you probably have like half a dozen core markets. The problem with these guys that went like complete nationwide is they're getting all the leads in the swamps. They're getting all the leads. Google loves it. Google's like, wow, you're saying I can literally sell you the inventory that no one's bidding on. You'll actually pay for all the garbage no one else wants. The reason why no one else wants it is because those deals are impossible to dispo. There's we at InvestorLift, we looked at the number one reason. Every time someone leaves us, we ask them, hey, why did you leave InvestorLift? And it's not the number one reason why people leave InvestorLift is not because they didn't like their products, it's because they went out of business. And the number one reason why people went out of business is because they pursued a national wholesaling strategy. So that was the number one business killer for wholesalers last year. Number one. Okay, so don't do that. That's insanity, absolute insanity. But I think that that's where kind of this fear stems from, is they've seen some of these guys that are like, oh, I'm in one market. Now I'm going to go become a national wholesaler. And then they go turn on a national wholesaling PPC campaign, and then all of a sudden they've blown through $250,000 and only made $150,000 back and are upside down in their ad spend. I think that's where it comes from, is just so many guys doing the wrong strategy last year.
Yeah, it's a tough strategy. And like what I've always said is some of our most successful and also least successful clients do the national strategy. I was just talking with someone else who has a 25x return on investment on their ad spend with the pure national model. And he's killing it. But he does almost 100% novations, has a slower cash conversion cycle, can move stuff in more rural areas, also has good spreads, being that he's novating and has a really low cost per lead, and he makes it work. And it's a fantastic business. Granted, he's not doing $1 million a month with it because it's a little bit harder to scale that. / he's also kind of newer to it. So, like just some companies are going to scale faster than others just based on their, appetite. Not everybody wants to grow to $1 million a month in 5 months, or is willing to put that level of investment into the business to make it happen. But that considered, like, I do know people that do really fantastic with that. For everyone I know that does really well, I know many that have done really poorly. And I don't know, I'm kind of a fan of like moving in the direction you want to go in, not like 100%. What I mean by that is if you're in one market, it's a great idea to add several markets and see how that does. You don't have to go clear from one side of the scale all the way to the other side and fall on your face because you're doing a completely different business model. You can do sort of like that in between and then, contract or expand it according to what works for you. It's just about like being really good at whatever it is that you're going to do. And if that's not what you're good at, then it's going to be a really rough game.
Yeah, like even if you just take 20% of your budget and throw that into one test market, like you could find out that your return on ad spend is 2x higher in that one market you're testing. And your cash conversion is like, it's 30% lesser. But you don't know that until you try. So I think what you're going to see over the next few years is you're going to see more of a push towards mega wholesalers kind of taking over the business, because there's such a data and technology advantage now. Like the data and technology is getting better and better and better and better and better. And the barrier to entry to actually compete at the highest level is getting higher and higher and higher. Right? It used to be that anyone with a cell phone could run a successful wholesaling business. Now you're competing against guys that have the best marketing, the best tech, the best sales, the best everything. If you come in just with the cell phone, yeah, you can get lucky and catch a deal here or there, but you're not going to be rolling in the dough. The big guys are going to eat your lunch 9 times out of 10, right? So I think you're going to see more and more and more of that. You're going to see less small wholesalers. You're going to see more bigger wholesalers. And as you see more and more bigger wholesalers, those are the guys that the guys that become those mega wholesalers are the ones that run their business scientifically, where basically they're just A/B testing nonstop, A/B testing, A/B testing, A/B testing, learning more and more and more, and getting if you just get 1% better every day, you compound that over a year, and all of a sudden, boom, you got a huge, massive competitive advantage. So I think you're going to see, like, my prediction, you can write this down. My prediction is, I would say probably in the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see the first $100 million a year wholesaler. And then you're going to see a couple of those emerging. You'll see a few of them emerging here in the next few years. We've already had one company do 8 million in 1 month. So, I mean, that was like a really weird outlier month. That's not like consistent, or maybe like, but like then they came back and did 750,000 in a day just last month. You know, so you're starting to see more and more of these crazy big numbers. But the guys that hit those numbers, the only way to do that is in multiple markets. You're not doing that in one city. That's not possible. Like, it's not possible. So if you want to be in one city, sure, be in one city, but you're not gonna have a mega wholesaling business. You're gonna have, you could do 100, 200,000 a month, and a lot of people are fine with that. But if you want to go really big, you need to be in multiple markets.
So what else are you seeing, Robert, that's different between the companies that you know? I think you have a unique perspective, having so many companies come through your platform, and also getting that back end access to understand kind of how companies are actually performing, not just how they say they're performing necessarily, which you and I both know can be really different things. So based on that knowledge, a few things just to like summarize what I've heard so far. And you kind of fill in the gaps where I might be missing something. Cash conversion cycle matters. Specialization and exit strategy, diversification in markets. Beyond those things, these companies that are doing really well, what are they doing differently than the companies that are struggling?
I mean, a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. Like, they just focus on doing like the McDonald's model, doing like one process really well. They're not a jack of all trades. They're just, hey, we're doing this one thing this one way. Here's our process. They really focus on doing all the fundamentals very, very well. They do not do real markets. If you look at the data, the cash conversion cycle on real markets, there's a direct correlation. There's this one graph I could show you where it's number of days it takes to dispose a deal versus county population. And as you increase county population, the time it takes to sell a deal goes down, down, down. Like, after about 500,000 people living in a county, all that stuff is moving in 30 days or less. But if you're sub 500,000 people, that's where you see cash conversion cycles where sometimes stuff is sitting for 100, 120 plus days. And then that's also where you see all the high contract fallout rate, right? There's some counties that have like 70, 80% contract fallout rate. It's because they're so rural that there just aren't buyers in those areas. So buyers just, like, you would have, even at 20 cents on the dollar, no one's buying. And then even if you do sell, the assignment fees are tiny, right? Like, you might make $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on a deal. So it's like, do I really want to spend 100 days, have a 70% chance of failure to maybe potentially make $5,000? Like, if you think about like the future expected value of that, you take like 0.3% probability of making 5K. What's the future expected value of that? Like $1,500 is your future expected value. Conversely, if you look at the smart companies, I have one CEO I work with. He's like, if it doesn't have a football stadium, I don't run marketing.
I've heard that actually, which I'm sure correlates. I'm not sure it's the best way to choose markets, but I'm sure it correlates.
A way to simplify, so a way to simplify a complex, complex thing. But if you look at the top companies, they're just really focused on the major metros where we know we're going to be selling stuff. We're going to be selling it fast because those are very efficient, liquid markets. So our expected probability of selling a deal is very high. Usually we're looking at, a major market, we're going to be at 90% plus probability of selling the deal. The average assignment fees, if we look at Southern California, the average assignment fee is north of $50,000. and the cash conversion cycles are under 30 days a lot of times. So it's like, okay, 90% chance of making 50 grand. My future expected value on that deal is 45,000. Okay, now think about how that informs your marketing. In one county, I have a future expected value of $1,500 with a cash conversion cycle of 100 days. In another market, I have a future expected value of $45,000 with a cash conversion cycle of sub 30 days. You can spend a hell of a lot more money on acquiring leads and acquiring customers in that major metro than you ever can in a rural market. So I would say the biggest thing is like the most successful companies understand that. They understand that, okay, what's the future expected value of my pipeline? And then what you can do is you can reverse engineer how much you can actually spend on Google Ads to go acquire those customers. And the most successful companies understand that whoever can pay the most wins. Right? Like we have one customer, we scaled them up from $8,000 a month to over $400,000 a month in spend in one single market. Think about that. Right? Why would you do that? You do that because you know you've done the numbers and you know you're making that $400,000 back with multiples on top of it. So I've said it many times before. If you want to get Ferrari assignment fees, you got to buy some Ferrari leads, but you also got to know the price. You got to know the price. So just start on Dispo. Start on Dispo and work your way back.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I want to ask you about one more thing. I think if there's like three main things that kind of show how much is a company doing. First one's going to be the number of markets. Next is the number of exit strategies. We've talked kind of about both of those in terms of diversification versus specialization. What about marketing? There's a lot of people who are doing TV and radio and SMS and cold call and direct mail and PPC and Facebook ads and SEO and billboards. And, the list goes on and on, although I think that was a pretty comprehensive list. But there's a lot of, there's a lot of available marketing channels. And it could be said that diversification in marketing channels is important. It could also be said that each marketing channel kind of has its own type of lead it generates and its own processes internally that are going to be most appropriate for that marketing channel. And in that way, companies that specialize sometimes do really well. Like as an example, our clients that are heavy cold call and then turn on PPC, they tend to not close as well as our clients that do PPC only. Because if you're just used to sifting through a pile of junk to find a good lead all day, then it's going to be weird to get just quality leads. And it's much more likely that you kind of miss something good because it's a different mindset, right? Your PPC, maximize every lead. Cold call, find something that's good, hopefully, out of the list. And it's a volume game, right? So that's just an example. But what are you seeing about these companies that are doing really well? Do they have one marketing channel, 3, 7?
I would say that anyone on InvestorLift making more than $500,000 a month is spending 80% plus of their budget on one channel. That's Google Ads. The reason being is it's the number one lead source in terms of quality. It's got the lowest cash conversion cycle, and the return on ad spend is really solid, right? It's predictable. But the more important thing too is on these other channels, you can't develop a sustainable competitive advantage, right? So like, for example, if I try to get really good at direct mail. Like, how do I develop a competitive advantage on direct mail? We're all buying data from the same places. We all have the same lists. You can't really develop a competitive advantage on lists. You could maybe try to get the data a little bit earlier, but everyone knows with direct mail, you got to hit the guys 5-10 times before you actually get a lift and actually get a good response. So even if you get your first mail piece out a few weeks earlier, like, does that really do that much? And then as soon as you figure that out, someone else is going to figure it out. You could A/B test, right? That's the thing that I used to always do, is just A/B test, A/B test, A/B test. But then you know what's going to happen. Your competitor is going to get your mail piece and they're going to copy it. So you can't really develop a competitive advantage on direct mail. Could you do it on TV? Could you do it on radio? It's the same shit. Like, you can't really develop a competitive advantage. With Google, it's different. With Google, it's a lot different, because as you start spending money on that account, that account gets smarter and smarter and smarter. You're feeding the algorithm, you're feeding Google's neural networks more and more data. And Google's getting better and better and better. It's going to get better and better and better at finding more people that look like those people. And the more you spend, the more intelligent it gets. The more intelligent it gets, the more money you make. And the more money you make, the more you can afford to spend and throw back in. So, like, if you're just getting into Google Ads right now, you're already late to the game. You're 5 years late to the game. But 5 years from now, like, you're not even going to be able to compete. So that's, again, why I think you're going to see this trend towards mega wholesalers taking more market share here in the next few years. Because a beginner wholesaler that's spending $5,000 a month in their account is not going to be able to compete against a mega wholesaler that's spending $1 million a month. So that's why I like Google Ads. It's because you can develop a sustainable long-term competitive advantage if you can get the numbers working and keep that campaign growing and growing and growing and get more and more capital invested. And every dollar you spend then is strengthening your competitive advantage.
I think that's kind of the irony of what we both do. If you think about it, the companies that have the most buyer relationships have an advantage, right? You could think of building a buyer's list, kind of like one of those things where the biggest company is always going to have an advantage compared to a smaller company because they're adding more and more and faster. So they have the ability to disposition deals at larger spreads. And in a way, InvestorLift kind of shortcuts that. In the same way, we kind of are the same thing when it comes to PPC. We, like, our clients collectively are Google's biggest client in this industry. And we have data sharing practices between those clients to where our clients that spend $1,000 a month in PPC don't actually statistically have a different return on investment than our clients that spend six figures every month, which is highly atypical because usually the companies that spend the most money are going to have the best results. And even those companies that spend six figures each month, we can make it as if they were spending even more, right? Because it's not like once you unlock this certain amount of spend, then suddenly the algorithm has fully learned, right? AI is just going to get smarter and smarter the more data you can feed it. So that's something I think is just really neat. In a way, InvestorLift and Bateman Collective have the same business model. We're just tackling different problems.
Yeah. No, I remember you showed me how you're doing the like cross account little trick there that you got going. And I was like, that is the freaking gold mine right there. As soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, anyone that asks me where to go for PPC, I'm sending them your way because I know the power of that. I know the power of that and how it could jumpstart an account and give them such a competitive advantage day one. Yeah, we're doing the same thing on InvestorLift with buyers. Basically the exact same strategy. Let's work together to go strengthen our competitive advantage as a collective instead of trying to just develop it on our own.
Yep, totally agreed. Well, this has been fantastic, Robert. Super grateful for the time that you've spent here and all the insights that you shared. Is there anything else that you'd want to share that you think people need to know?
I think if you're in the business right now, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is, they'll hear me talking about building $1 million a month businesses, $2 million a month businesses. They're like, well, I don't want to do that. That's not me. I'm happy with $200K a month. That's fine. But the strategies and the playbook that you should run to get to $1 million a month, you should run regardless of whether or not you're trying to get there. Even if you're trying to go to 200K a month, build your business as if you're trying to go for $1 million. Because you're going to do stuff right. And your 200K is going to be a lot more consistent. Or your 300K or 400K or whatever it is. So it's like one of the things I always tell entrepreneurs, I say, build your business to sell it. Build it as if you're going to sell it. Even if you keep it forever, build it as if you're always going to sell it next year. Because you'll build it right. You'll start doing things right. You'll keep your books clean. You'll hire the right people. You'll put the right systems and processes in place. Or another analogy I like to use is like, if you want to keep your house clean, best way to keep your house clean is just invite guests over every couple of days. If you invite guests over every couple of days, you're always going to have a clean house, right? So, yeah, that would be my advice is like, even if you're not trying to go to $1 million, build it as if, because you'll do things right. And that will make your life a lot easier. You'll have a lot less risk in your business. You'll sleep better at night. And overall, you're going to be much happier as an entrepreneur and as a real estate business owner.
Love that. Very, very sound advice. I also want to put in a little plug of our clients that are we have different segments of clients that we track from a return on investment standpoint. Our highest return segment right now is our national clients. That's why you'll hear me talking about national wholesaling on this podcast a lot. That's part of the reason that I wanted Robert here to kind of share what he's doing, because 100% of those companies, as far as I'm aware, are investor-lift customers. It's almost non-negotiable. If you're going to do the national model, it is so much harder to do it without that. So I highly recommend if you're interested in that and learning more about investor-lift, definitely check them out. We do have a discount code. How much is it, Robert? 10%, I think, off of investor-lift.
Yeah, if you go to get.investorlift.com and you use the coupon code Bateman, if you use that coupon code Bateman, then you'll get 10% off the first year. All right, so get.investorlift.com, and then when you get to checkout, just put in the coupon code Bateman. That will give you 10% off your first year on InvestorLift.
Yeah. So please, please do that if that's the right fit for you. Thank you again for your time, Robert. It's been fantastic having you on here, and we'll have to do it another time. And for everybody else listening, I will see you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Brandon. Appreciate having me on, and we'll see you next time.